All right, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Parker, and I'm a member of the marketing team at the Perry Johnson Companies, and I'll be helping to facilitate today's webinar and offer support to our speakers. I'm also joined by Tom Wheat here, who will be joining us for the Q&A later, but I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dejan, who's our speaker for today.
Well, thanks, Parker, and thanks for inviting me for this webinar. And it's an honor, really, to present this topic of ISO 27001 to the audience of PGR, with which, of course, we have very good cooperation. Anyway, so today the topic is around what are the benefits of this leading information security or cybersecurity standard, and really where to start with the implementation of the ISMS. And my name is Dejan Kosutic. I'm the CEO at Advisera and also the lead expert for ISO 27001 at this company. So basically, my main point today is really that this standard, ISO 27001, is, sometimes perceived as, a kind of only a paperwork that doesn't really have any additional benefit. But this kind of perception is really wrong, because if you do it, if you implement the standard properly, then you can actually drive revenue of new revenue for your company. So it's not only about, let's say, being compliant. It's not only about getting, a certificate. It's also about actually helping your business do better. And this is how we see the standard, and this is basically what I'll be explaining you how to achieve this during this webinar today. So let's just briefly go through the agenda. So first, I'll present you these four main benefits of ISO 27001. And then I'll go through these 16 steps that are needed for you to actually take before you go for a certification. I'll also briefly explain, how long does it take to implement the standards, how much does it cost, this whole process of the implementation and certification, and finally, what are the three options to start with ISO 27001. And of course, you can ask questions, so feel free to send questions through this question pane, and I'll try to answer some of these questions during my presentation. And the rest of the questions I'll answer during the Q&A session, which we will have at the end. Great. So what are the benefits? So why would you actually go for the standard? So the first, I would say, and the biggest benefit is typically that you can get new clients, or that you can, let's say, retain existing clients. Because as you probably know, if you're in some kind of a B2B market, very often the clients that you have are asking you to get certified against some of these standards, or especially ISO 27001. So if you're processing some kind of sensitive data, typically you would get this kind of a request from your client. So if you're a kind of a SaaS provider, or if you're a consultant, or if you're handling any kind of sensitive or personal data, this is usually this kind of request is coming from your existing clients. So unless you get certified, well, then you're in danger of actually losing these clients. So by investing into this certification, you're actually protecting your revenue. But it also goes a step forward. So if you have a potential clients who actually are, I would say, they want to make sure that you're handling their data in a secure way, then you can get certified, and this way you can actually show to them that you are a trusted partner, and this is how you increase your chances of getting a new client. So I would say the first and the biggest benefit is really new revenue, or protecting existing revenue from your clients. Now, second benefit is compliance. And when I say compliance, I don't mean only the compliance with ISO 27001. I mean compliance with various laws and regulations, because when you look at it, when you look at ISO 27001, it's usually serves as a kind of a baseline for many cybersecurity laws and regulations. When you take a look at, for example, let's say GDPR, this is European privacy regulation. This security part of GDPR is really very similar to 27001, which means that once you implement ISO 27001, you're automatically compliant with the security part or security requirements within GDPR. Similar thing is with new EU regulations for cybersecurity called NIS2. This is the one for these critical infrastructure organizations. Similar thing for DORA. This is also another cybersecurity regulation for financial organizations in Europe. So all of these regulations, when they speak about security, they have very similar requirements to 27001. And this basically means once you implement 27001, you actually get compliant with this security aspect of these regulations. Okay, another benefit are actually costs. Now, this might sound counterintuitive. Usually, this kind of implementation project is perceived as a cost thing, without any a return on it. But actually here, if you implement ISO 27001, the main idea of, or one of the main ideas in 27001 is that you are going to prevent incidents from happening. Now, any incident, security incident that happens costs you money, right? If you, I don't know, lose some data, first of all, you have to get this data back. You have to pay some ransomware, or you have to, I don't know, repair some damage on your equipment, these kind of things. So any incident costs, and I think the statistics is that in US, I think the average security breach costs around $4 million for larger companies in US. And I mean, as you can imagine, the implementation of 27001 and certification costs, far less than these millions of dollars. So basically, by investing, I would say, in security, by investing in this compliance and certification, you're actually decreasing the costs in the future, because you will have a lower chance of getting or having some kind of a data breach or incident. Finally, the benefit is around processes, because if you already have some standards like 9001 or 14001, you know that one of the some of the most important requirements of these standards is that you document and set up clear processes. Similar thing is with 27001. And once you actually start defining these processes, you actually get a more efficient organization. Because let's imagine that there is a company, a SaaS company, right, provides some kind of SaaS software as a service products, a young company growing very quickly, growing more than 100% a year. Now you can imagine which kind of problems this company can have, because they simply grew too fast and they didn't have time to set up their processes, and it's not very clear, who is in charge of what, who has to do what in what kind of sequence, and so on. So once you start implementing 27001 or any other ISO standard, you actually start getting these processes in a company in a clear order, which means that operationally you will have a much efficient organization. So roughly these are the 4 benefits, and I wouldn't say that all 4 would be applicable to each business, but I would say that at least 1 or 2 are certainly applicable to any business. So you will always have some case how to present this to your top management. All right, let's move to the next slide, and this is around certification. So how do you actually certify? I mean, in order to actually contact contact PJR and ask for a certification quote, you actually have to first implement the standard and become fully compliant. So I'll show you now these 16 steps that are needed actually to get to this point where you can actually start the certification audit. So first of all, you should get a management support, meaning you have to obtain enough money, enough people to run your project, because without this, it's going to be extremely hard for you to get compliant with the standard. Next thing is that you have to start running this implementation as a project, because you can't really expect that you simply give this task, okay, you have to, to someone in the company to do everything needed for the implementation, because it's not going to work. So you need I would say, a formal project manager, you need to have a project plan, you need to have a sponsor of the project, you need to have milestones in the project, you need to have deadlines, these kind of things, because without them, you'll get lost. So definitely a project plan is very, very important. I mean, treating the whole thing as a project is very important. Okay, and then the next step is to identify interested parties and their requirements. Now, who might be these interested parties? You might have your clients, you might have the government, I mean, the laws and regulations. So basically, you have to collect all of these requirements from interested parties. Why? Because it's important that during your implementation project, you address all of these security requirements. So let's say that you're operating in Europe, and therefore you have to be compliant with GDPR. This is one of the requirements from interested parties, right, from the government. Therefore, this you have to use all the applicable controls, which will then cover these security requirements from GDPR. Or you might have a client who has specified that you have to use some specific type of a backup. And then, of course, you have to take this into account later on once you implement this control related to backup. All right, now, the next step is to define the scope of the implementation and management intention. And this is usually done through 2 or 3 documents. One is the ISMS scope. So you have to define, how far are you going to build your ISMS or information security management system. You have to define what is the, you have to write your top level information security policy. By the way, this is not a detailed security policy where you specify all the security rules. This is only a general document which shows in which direction you have to run your ISMS and who is responsible for what in your ISMS. And you also have to specify top level information security objectives. So with these 3 things, you actually define the scope, so how far you're going to run your ISMS, but also in which direction and what you want to achieve with security. Okay, and then the next step is to define how you're going to do the risk assessment. I mean, risk assessment and treatment. So these 2 things are risk management. And this is done through a document called risk assessment methodology. So this methodology basically defines the rules on how you're going to assess the risks and how you're going to treat the risks. Because without this document, you would have, I would say, chaos while doing the risk assessment, because it's not going to, because this is a too complex process just to do it without any kind of rules. And just to mention that if you're already doing, if you already have 9001 or 14001 or any other of ISO standards, risk management in 27001 is by far more important than it is in other standards. I know that other standards use risk management, but not, I would say, as predominantly as, it's not as important as in ISO 27001, but because basically the whole logic of 27001 revolves around, finding which bad things can happen to your company, which risks, and then as the next big step, defining which kind of controls or safeguards you have to implement to reduce these risks. So I would say, the main logic is this, find the risks, find potential problems, and then fix them through implementing various controls. Okay, I'll definitely come to these steps a little bit later on. I'll show you this. Anyway, so once you define the methodology, then you can start doing a risk assessment and treatment. So list the risks, find out how big they are, and then find the treatment. These are these controls from the Annex A of ISO 27001. And you have to write this risk assessment report. Now, the next step is really to list all the controls that you want to implement, and this is done through this document called Statement of Applicability. So the Statement of Applicability is basically a list of all the controls from Annex A, and by the way, there are 93 controls in this Annex A of the latest 2022 revision of ISO 27001, and then you list for each of them which one is applicable and which one is not applicable. And this applicability is defined from 2 sources. The first source is if there is a risk which would require this kind of a control, And the second one is if there is a requirement from an interested party, which also might require any of these controls. So statement of applicability basically says, okay, here are the controls, all the controls from Annex A, and out of these controls, here are the ones that we define or declare as applicable for our business. And then you also have to note in the statement of applicability what is the status of each of these controls. Like, is it already implemented, or are planning to implement it, or similar to this. And then the next step is to write this risk treatment plan. And basically, this risk treatment plan is nothing else but a definition of, who is going to implement all of these controls. So who is in charge? What kind of a budget do you need? Which kind of people resources do you need? What are the deadlines? So these are the things that you're then specifying in your risk treatment plan. So basically, this is an implementation plan for all of your controls. And then you have to define how you're going to measure the effectiveness of these controls. You can write a measurement methodology, or you can do it in some, let's say, more easier way, but you have to know, how you're going to measure. Typically, you're measuring them against the objectives that you are setting in one of the previous steps, as I explained. And then you start actually with the implementation of the controls, and typically, the implementation of controls goes through writing, various security policies and procedures. So this is where you write these detailed documents, like, classification policy, access control policy, backup policy, these kind of things. And of course, you execute various tasks related to implementation. And this is where you also, let's say, implement a new technology or this kind of, any technology that you might need. You are setting up new processes and so on. Now, from my experience, most companies already have all the technology they need. So very few companies actually have to purchase some new technology because of 27001. Rather, it is more about actually using the existing technology in a more secure way. Okay, so very simple example, you might have, you probably do, every company has some kind of a software with some kind of passwords, but if you're not using secure passwords, meaning passwords that are, let's say, long enough, that are complex enough, then you'll have to start using more secure passwords. So just an example of how to start using your technology in a more secure way. Okay, I'm having a question here from Himani. Do you have a sample or copy of a new statement of applicability? What attributes should be included in this document? So I can send you a document. I can send you a link to an article which speaks about statement of applicability. But typically you have, statement of applicability is a table which has couple of columns. So the first column is the control, the second column is whether it's applicable or not, then usually the reason for making this control applicable, then the implementation method, and finally the status. So these are, it's a very simple, I would say, document with these 5 or 6 columns. Okay, I'll try to let me see if I can find this link to this article. Okay. Okay. I've sent now this link through this chat window where you can actually open up this article around statement of applicability. Good. Now let me move forward. Now, usually in parallel to implementation of controls, you also have to teach your employees how to use these controls, and also how to why these controls are needed. So let's take an example again of this, let's say, passwords. So let's say that you are starting to use, I don't know, some more complex passwords, and you're actually introducing password manager as a way to generate these more complex passwords. So you'll have to train your employees on how to use this password manager, but you also have to explain them why they need to do it, because they'll probably not be very happy that they have to, generate more complex passwords and I don't know, change them every 6 months. So it's really about explaining them why. This is awareness, and showing them how, and this is a training. And this has to be done in parallel to the implementation of these controls. And then you, of course, have to start operating the ISMS. So once you implemented all the controls, you have to start operating the ISMS, meaning you have to start doing these things on a daily basis. So you just have to start, walking the talk. Everything that you have written in policies and procedures, you have to execute on a daily basis. So let's say that you have written a backup policy, and in the backup policy you have written that you need to perform the backup for a particular system, let's say every 6 hours. Well, then this is what you have to do. You have to perform the backup every 6 hours, and you have to create records which show that you are really performing this backup. Okay. And once you start operating the ISMS, you also have to start monitoring and measuring the ISMS, meaning you have to start basically seeing the results of how it operates. So if one of your, let's say, objectives was that you want to decrease the number of incidents, then you have to measure the number of incidents and actually compare it to your objective of reducing this number of incidents. And this is actually how you monitor and measure your whole ISMS. One of the very important elements of the implementation is internal audit. So as well as in 9001 and other ISO standards, you have to perform an internal audit, which basically shows you how good are you doing and how many non-conformities you have when it comes to the standard itself, but also to your internal policies and procedures. And this is very important thing to do. So it's something that has to be done, I would say, properly before you move on to management review, before you move on to the certification. And of course, the internal auditor has to produce the internal audit report, and he or she has to raise corrective actions. One of the last steps before the, let's say, completion of the implementation is this management review. So again, very similar concept to 9001 and other standards. This is where the top management has to take into account key information about the ISMS and has to make some key decisions around security. Decisions like, whether to invest more budget into security, whether to change some processes or policies and procedures, whether to satisfy some new requirements from other interested parties, these kind of things. And of course, you have to produce minutes of the meeting. You need to have some kind of a record related to these decisions. And then one of the things that, one of the steps, even though this is not really a step in the implementation, this is something that is done continuously, are improvements. So once you actually start operating the ISMS, you have to continually improve what you're doing in your security, meaning that you are continually making your security better so that you decrease, any kind of incidents or any other bad things that could happen. And so this is done through corrective actions, but also through let's say, other means and so on. So basically, once you finish all these 16 steps, then you are ready for the certification, and then it's ready. Then this is the right time really to invite your PJR manager and ask them really to start with the certification audit. Of course, after you get certified, you have to maintain your ISMS, but I would say this is a hot topic for another webinar. Okay, I received also one question. I received two questions. So one from Sam. Will we receive a recording of this presentation? So yes, the session is recorded. Then after the webinar, you'll receive the link to this recording, and also you'll receive the webinar presentation deck also after the webinar. Okay, Christine is asking, is this similar to CMMC? To be honest, I don't know the details of CMMC. I know this is, I would say, one cybersecurity framework in United States. I'm not, again, I don't know the details, but let's say judging from SOC 2 and similar cybersecurity frameworks, I would say they're big overlaps between CMMC and 27001. Good. Let me move on. So how long does it typically take to implement the standard? It really depends on the size of the company. And of course, if you are a very small company, let's say up to 20 employees, it's probably take you up to 3 months. Okay, it's going to be quicker if you're using some kind of a tool or if you're using a consultant. If you're doing this completely on your own, it's going to take a little bit slower. But it shouldn't be really much more than this 3 months for a small company. Okay, 20 to 50 employees, probably 3 to 5 months. 50 to 200 employees, 5 to 8 months. More than 200 employees, probably 8 months. Or so if you're a couple of thousand employees, probably more than 1 year. There is also an article on our website, on Advisera website, where you can actually see details of all these implementation steps and also the breakdown of how much time you need and actually who you need to include in your implementation. So I'll send you now the link. Okay, so here goes the article. Okay, so the article is called ISO 27001 Implementation Guide, Checklist of Steps, Timing, and Cost Involved. So if you take a look at the chat, you will see this link, and you can click it and open the article. Okay, now let's go to the topic of cost. So how much does it really cost? What is really which kind of costs do you have to take into account? Now, unfortunately, the implementation is not like off-the-shelf product where you can say, okay, give me one ISO. It doesn't really work this way. So it's a project with various costs involved, and there are basically 4 types of costs. First one is the cost of acquiring knowledge. So you can hire let's say a consultant. Basically you're paying someone to for the knowledge of the implementation. Of course, you don't have to go with a consultant, but this is something that I'll mention in the next slide. But if you're doing this yourself, then you have to educate your employees through courses, and then this again comes down to a cost of acquiring knowledge. Then sometimes you will have to go for new technology. Again, this is not very often, but some companies also have to pay for this. Of course, you'll have to pay to PJR for the certification. And I mean, people very often ask, okay, how much does it cost to get certified? I mean, how much is the certification body cost? To be honest, this really depends. Again, it's not a fixed price. It depends on the several factors, including again the size of your company and the location in which country you operate. But actually, the best thing would be, if you're interested in finding out a concrete cost for certification, simply send a message through the chat or contact your PGR manager, and they'll get back to you and give you a quote right away. So it's the best way actually to get the concrete information on the certification cost. And of course, you'll have employee time because it takes time for your company. I mean, it takes time of your employees to implement the standard, which means that you have to calculate also this into your whole budget. Okay, now the question is also where to start. So what are kind of let's say options, strategic options, so to say, on where to start with the implementation? So how can you actually do it? There are 3 options. One is that you start with your own employees without any external help. And this is usually the case where you already have someone knowledgeable in the company who already has experience with, I would say, a couple of implementations of 27001. And indeed, in this kind of a case, you don't really need any external help, since you have the know-how within the company. Now, the second approach is to hire a consultant, and this is typically something that you would do if you are very short with time, if you have to implement this in a very short time. And if you have, I would say, a pretty big budget, because this is usually the most expensive option, because if you pay a consultant, make sure you hire a good consultant, because hiring a bad consultant doesn't really help. And I mean, hiring a good consultant will cost you money. So this is something that you have to prepare a big budget for it. The third option is basically in between the first two options. So in between the implementing it with your own employees and the consultant, because basically this third option is where you use some kind of a tool that actually gives you all the know-how, that gives you, I would say, online support for your implementation, but you're using your own employees for the implementation. And you'll see that there are several tools in the market provided by our company, but also by several other competitors in the market, where you can actually use them. You can use them for the implementation. This is some kind of ISO 27001 software or similar. So the question is really which path to choose. And the thing is, it really depends on what is your specific situation. So if you want to, I mean, again, if you already have experienced employees, then go with option A. If you're really short with time and the money is not a problem, go with option B. If you, let's say, if your budget is not too big and you do have some time of your employees to invest into the implementation, then option C might be a good option here. So think about what is really applicable in your case, and then you can decide which of these options to go for. Okay, great. So let me go with some kind of a short conclusion here, and then we can go for the Q&A session. So I would say that if you plan this implementation properly, then you can actually complete this project much more quickly and much more, I would say, smoothly than you expected. So make sure that you know what you're doing, and make sure that you have planned for everything. And actually, what I'll do now is send you also the link to this page on our website, which gives you an access to several articles on ISO 27001. So it's called ISO 27001 Where to Start. So let me just send you the link. Okay. So if you click this link, you will see the this page. It will show you, I would say, a couple of dozen articles, key articles on ISO 27001, and there you will find, easy way to answer and to learn about anything, including, I don't know, risk management, statement of applicability, major steps in the implementation, and so on and so forth. Okay, great. I think I covered most of the things all of the things that I wanted to go through. So yeah, I'm willing and ready to answer any questions. So I'll be happy to explain further, any of your doubts or questions. So let's see if there is anything you would like to know further about this leading cybersecurity standard and the implementation. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so I hope that the connection is working fine. But if there are no other questions, then let me all thank you very much for your participation. I hope that you found this webinar useful, that you learned something new about ISO 27001. And of course, if you have any further questions, feel free to get in touch with PGR, and then they will they will explain you anything further that you need to do for ISO 27001. So thanks again for joining, and have a nice day.